Welcome to the Department of Pesticide Regulation Registration Branch workshop. This has been a long-planned workshop, and staff really did an awesome job to make sure that you get the information you need to register products and also learn more about the department. How many of you have been working with Department of Pesticide Regulation for a while? Maybe 2 years? Good. 5 years? 10 years? Oh, great. Okay, well, I've been on my position for 10 years, so you probably already know me. How about 15 years? Wow, okay. And I'll stop there because then I'm dating you too. So anyway, I'm here to give you an overview of the department. Because you've been dealing probably mostly with the department's registration branch, I would like to give you more information overall about how the department operates. The Department of Pesticide Regulation is unique in a way that we are the only state that has a very rigorous registration process aside from US EPA. And that's the reason why we really need to work with our registrants to be able to make sure that you give us the information we need to be able to register your products. The mission of our department, and you probably already know this from the things that you see on our website, is to protect human health and the environment by regulating pesticide sales and use and by fostering reduced risk pest management. So that's really our mission that we have touted all along. And for our funding, we are funded by regulatory fees. We are what they call specially funded because we don't get general funds. And so pesticide sales is 79% of our funding. Registrations and licenses are 19% of our funding. And then we have about 366 employees authorized for 405 positions. So as you can tell, we have some vacancies that we have to fill. Out of the 405 positions, we have 247 or over 50% of our staff are scientists, toxicologists, research scientists, environmental scientists, and environmental program managers. So this is our general org chart. For the DPR director, we have a chief deputy director, and then we have 3 divisions really in our department. We have the pesticide programs division, which is I'm part of. I'm one of the assistant directors in the division. And then we have the information technology division and administrative services division. The IT and administrative service division is really our support. So they give us our personnel services, our fiscal branch, audits, but the bulk of the programs are in the pesticide programs division. So in our programs division, we have 6 main branches. One of that is the pesticide registration. And as you can see, what I always say is everything comes through registration, and then if we have problems, it ends up in enforcement. So you don't want to end up in enforcement, you just want to be in the registration one. But so we do have 6 branches, and I will be talking about them one by one, just in general, so you have an idea of what we have in the department. So in registration, we process over 5,000 registration submissions a year. Registrants must provide data on potential human health and environmental effects associated with the use of their product. Through the years, our data requirements have changed and have evolved. One of the big examples that I can tell you in the last 10 years is data requirements for bees, for pollinator protection. So those things have evolved, and the same thing with water issues. As you know, we have a lot of ecological concerns now that there's pesticides in the water, in the streams, and all that, and so the data requirements for ecological risk assessments have evolved as well. Registration branch also coordinate continuous evaluation because that's one of our statutes, is to be able to continuously evaluate pesticides even after registration. And so we reevaluate those pesticides when we need data from the registrants. If there's an adverse effect that's reported to us, And then we are able to evaluate that adverse effect and see if we do need to ask the registrants for more information if that adverse effect is valid or not. And then we license and renew registrations of approximately 13,500 pesticide products registered to over 1,500 different companies that contain over 1,000 different active ingredients. So as you can see, we really process a lot of things in this branch. And kudos to our staff and Anne's leadership, because they really do a wonderful job. So the next branch that I'm going to talk about is the Human Health Assessment branch. Part of the data requirements, all the toxicological studies that are submitted to the registration branch goes to human health assessment. We require acute, subchronic, chronic, which is carcinogenicity, reproductive toxicity studies that are required to register a product. So all of the data that is required by US EPA, we require for the registrant to be submitted to DPR as well. In human health assessment, we have toxicologists that review studies, evaluate product safety, and assess risk. So they are also responsible for a comprehensive risk assessment. According to the state law, we are the only department that is required to do a risk assessment of pesticide active ingredients, especially when they go through a reevaluation if the toxic effect is adversely affecting humans. So we review all routes of exposure, all exposure scenarios that are on the label, and all exposure time periods. Sometimes people will ask, well, aren't you going to evaluate also the illegal use? Well, no. Anything that's illegal is not going to be evaluated because that's illegal. It's not supposed to be used that way. So the risk assessment of products that we do are based on how the products are used according to the label. And if mitigation is required or that use needs to be canceled because of adverse effect, then we can take action on that. But other than that, we do not look at illegal pesticide use. And also we evaluate possible health effects of illegal residues in food. That one we look into because we do find a lot of enforcement branch works with our human health assessment branch to look for those pesticide residues in produce. And also we conduct exposure assessment that is included in our risk assessment of active ingredients or pesticide products. And then our next branch is the Worker Health and Safety branch, and they have a human health mitigation program. We develop mitigation strategies according to the regulations, if we need to develop regulations to mitigate a pesticide product, or sometimes label changes. So if there are label changes that you are going to ask for to be added to the label, if those are going to adversely affect or may affect workers, then it goes to our scientists in worker health and safety to evaluate that. And they also coordinate mitigation implementation, assess worker health and public health impacts for pesticide use, and identify labeled uses for exposure assessments and mitigation activities. So most of our mitigation, not just worker health and safety, I know we're calling them the Worker Health and Safety branch, but that branch also works on safety of pesticides that are non-occupational as well. And we also have an outreach, a very active outreach and training section in our Worker Health and Safety branch. We have a bilingual person that goes out and does outreach for the things that we do in the department, not just worker health and safety, but everything that we do in the department. And then we also have a pesticide illness surveillance program that is in Worker Health and Safety branch. All pesticide illnesses are required to be reported to the county health officer. So if a worker or even a non-worker, like if your child get some bleach into the product while you're using it to disinfect your counters and you go to the doctor, that doctor is supposed to report that as a pesticide illness. And we, as a department, are required to investigate that. So we do send, whatever county that happened, we send that illness report to the county and they have to investigate that illness. So regardless if it's occupational or non-occupational, all of those have to be investigated. And we are the only state that can do that because of our partnership with our county ag commissioners. Most of the other states, they do investigate that too, but they have the public health department in their state that does that, and they don't necessarily have 58 county ag commissioners that can work with them. So we have the most number of pesticide illnesses that are reported in the world. We have, I think, an average of 2,000 illnesses that are reported to the department a year. Okay, so then we have our enforcement branch. The enforcement branch is in charge of our food safety program. They ensure that pesticide residues on raw produce are in compliance with US EPA tolerances. The tolerances in foods, it's the minimum amount or it's a threshold that EPA sets to find pesticide residues, specific pesticides, active ingredients in food. And so then whatever they set, if we find it in produce in California and it's over that tolerance, then it is illegal. And most of the things that we find in produce are the ones that are coming from out of the country, sometimes out of the state as well. And very few times that we do have some in California. So those grown in California. So samples are collected through the channels of trade. We go through wholesale and retail outlets. Sometimes we also go to the farmers markets to make sure that those are also, that they are growing or using pesticides correctly. And then distribution centers we also go to the distribution centers and we can trace, if we can, if they still have the box and the name of the person that or the company that they bought the produce from, then we can trace it back to where that produce was bought from. And then also, US EPA delegates use enforcement to DPR. They do the same thing for all the other states. So use enforcement or pesticide use enforcement is delegated to the states. And for us, we have the most robust enforcement program, again, because we partner with our county ag commissioners to do the enforcement on the ground for us. And then we report it to the US EPA as well. We have 3 regional offices, northern, central, and southern offices. And so we do have 3 offices that can go out and supervise the activities of the counties, depending on what region they are located. Use enforcement is implemented by 275 county agricultural commissioner staff. So that's a lot. And so that's why we have a very robust pesticide enforcement program. We oversee and direct the county ag commissioner activities, develop their work plans. We inspect and investigate, we do inspection and investigation training, compliance and enforcement response, and also program evaluations. So you don't want to end up in the enforcement side. And also enforcement, we have scientists that ensure that the pesticide labels are in compliance, and they also conduct federal inspections and facilitate and enforce pesticide use reporting. Then the next branch, or the 5th branch we have, is pest management and licensing. We do have a licensing and certification program for applicators. So we have different types of licenses. We have qualified applicator license, qualified applicator certificate. We have pest control aircraft pilot certificate. And so this new law about the drones applying for pesticide applications through drones, or what is it, unmanned aerial vehicle, I think it is. It's named something different now. They don't call it a drone. So we have now we're trying to develop a separate license category for those, because those have to be coordinated with the FAA, Federal Aviation. So we process a total number of 22,755 licenses a year. So you can imagine what kind of workload that is for us as well. And they have to be renewed by December 31st, or else a licensee or an applicator cannot apply pesticides on January 1st. So you can imagine our workload at the end of the year. And no matter how much we try to tell the applicators that they have, by, I think, September, we tell them, please renew your licenses, please renew. They all send it in December. And we also have, in our pest management licensing branch, we have a DPR school child care IPM program. We develop outreach and education materials for that program, and we conduct IPM workshops for school districts and child care providers. We have what is called a Healthy Schools Act that is required that we do that. We do outreach and encourage the schools to use IPM or make sure that they know how to use pesticides. When the school teachers, and I've heard this before, when the school teacher brings a wipe, the disinfectant wipes in school and tells the kids to just wipe your desks, that's not supposed to be done. So they're not supposed to use, the kids are not supposed to use those wipes on their desks. So we have to tell the teachers and the schools, you're not supposed to do that. And we also now are required to collect school and childcare pesticide use records, because for the longest time, they were voluntary, that the schools would report their pesticide use, because they do use herbicides and insecticides. A lot of schools have a big ant and cockroach problem, especially in their cafeterias. So those are all supposed to be reported now. And then we also maintain a school and childcare IPM website. So if you look at our website, there is a specific tab for school IPM, and we have a lot of information for schools that they can get information on how to use IPM, integrated pest management, how do you control ants without using pesticides. So we encourage that because that's part of our mission. And then our last but not least branch is the environmental monitoring program. Their general mandate is to continuously evaluate registered pesticides. So they have three main, and evaluate substances or pesticides before registration. So when your product comes in for registration and chemistry evaluates it and thinks that, or scientifically says that, we need to send this to the surface water program or to the groundwater program because it might be a leacher or it could contaminate surface water, then it's sent over to our environmental monitoring branch. There's three main programs in our environmental monitoring branch. The air program, they evaluate toxic air contaminants. They monitor. We are the only state that has a very extensive air monitoring network where we monitor right now we have 8, supposedly. We have 8 air monitoring sites, networks, where we evaluate 32, or we monitor for 32 active ingredients. And then they also do they also monitor for volatile organic compounds. We use all that data for our risk assessments and also for modeling. A lot of technology has been used now where you use your data that you get from actual monitoring sites and see if you can model it to predict what their concentrations will be after a certain amount of application rate with a certain amount of application method, certain type of application method. So it's been an evolving science, but we have very excellent scientists to do that here in the department. And then we also have a surface water program in environmental monitoring branch where they monitor surface water and they monitor sediment and aquatic toxicity. And then they also develop mitigation measures if they know that there is a problem. We work with our State Water Control Board and also with Department of Water Resources and also with US EPA Office of Pesticide Programs and their Office of Water to be able to make sure that the levels that we are monitoring to are acceptable with the EPA level and sometimes also with our State Water Resources Control Board. For regulation, they also developed regulation about 5 or 6 years ago now. We developed the pyrethroid use requirements for urban areas because of the pyrethroid runoff in surface water. And then we also worked with the registrants to be able to mitigate fipronil in surface water as well. So we were able to collaboratively work with the registrants to make sure that they changed their labels so that the fipronil is still efficient and active, but less in surface water. So that's it. We have, like I said, we have 6 pesticide programs in the department, and we would really like to encourage you to work with our registration branch, but all of the branches work with our registration branch to make sure that we have evaluated your products scientifically to the best of our ability, to the most current science that we have. And so thank you very much, Anne, for your team for making this workshop. Thank you, and thank you again for coming.